Government students, last week we talked about civil rights and the difference between civil liberties and civil rights. Like I mentioned in class, and like I'll mention to you in this video, I think the easiest way to kind of differentiate between civil liberties and civil rights is civil liberties deal with the individual, they're your personal freedoms, while civil rights deal with the rights of groups to be treated equally and not have to face discrimination. When we're talking about discrimination and when we're talking about segregation in the United States, we're talking about two different types of segregation. We have what we call legal segregation or de jure segregation, and we have what we call de facto or in fact segregation. Legal segregation or de jure segregation in the United States were segregation laws and Jim Crow laws, which existed really throughout the United States, but specifically in the South at the first half of the 20th century. I am happy to say that in the United States today, legal segregation is dead. Brown versus the Board of Education, as well as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, have killed legal segregation in the United States. Something that still survives in the United States is de facto segregation or segregation that exists in our society. If you were to look at a map by race, by location in the United States, it'll tell you the story that in the United States, we still have places where African Americans live, apartment complexes that are 90 to 95% African American. And in those same cities, you will see apartment complexes that are 90 to 95% Caucasians. In other words, integration of our races by location in the United States, in many cases, is not a reality in America today. We are also still segregated based on economics, based on education, and based on opportunities in America. Your lesson this week has to do with affirmative action. Affirmative action was an attempt and is an attempt to bridge that gap of de facto segregation in the United States by offering preferential treatment in many cases to minority groups when it comes to education, and it's sometimes when it came to applying for and receiving jobs. Affirmative action is still legal in the United States today because in the United States, we believe, and many people believe, that affirmative action creates diversity, and we celebrate diversity in the United States. In this lesson, you will debate affirmative action. Another concept that I want to get into is nationalism and two different versions of nationalism that exist in the United States. Now, nationalism is when you have pride in your country. There's kind of two types of nationalism that exist in the United States. We have civic nationalism, which says that you're proud to be an American. A lot of times we just simplify and say this is patriotism. Civic nationalism operates under the idea that everybody from any country, of any race, of any ethnicity, should be proud to be an American. There is another type of nationalism that exists in the United States. It's called racial nationalism, where the pride in your country goes along with the pride in your race in that country. Racial nationalism is a lot of times what we see when we think of the Black Power movement in the United States in the late 1960s and 1970s. And those two versions of nationalism still exist in America today. All right, knock out that affirmative action assignment, keep up with your work, and have a great Thanksgiving.